Rachel and I are out here at the mouth of Fisherman's Bay, exploring the animals in this nearshore environment. You might be able to see that red rock crab cruising in to the eelgrass.
Hide in the safety of the eelgrass.
Yeah. We're also noticing lots of fish zooming around, some little crabs, and I saw a flatfish, but it is expertly blended right in to the sand, and now I don't see it. So we're gonna just kind of look around and see if we can find it. Get some waves kicked up by these boats coming by. There's some graceful crabs crawling about.
There's a lot of graceful crabs in here.
Might be noticing the yellow blobs of the bubble snail eggs.
Yeah, let me see if I can find the actual snail to show you. They are significantly more camouflaged than their eggs are. The eggs really stand out, and the snails are kind of cryptid. Let's see.
Oh, I got one. She's got one. Slugging around.
So this is the slug. Look, they have two little eye spots on the front of their face, which is this end. It's not always apparent with these animals which end is up or front or back. But they have a tiny clear shell. This one's got a little bit of brown algae growing on it, so it looks more brown. And they move with this like slimy little foot. And they're just such a cool species and quite prolific, I'm guessing, in this area, because look at all those eggs.
Eggs for days.
So many. Alright.
Awesome find.
Let this guy go back down towards the bottom.
Whence you came.
Well, just because don't want him to be exposed and kind of trapped on top by the tide. Most of the slugs and things, soft-bodied creatures, like to go down, be underneath a layer of algae.
Excellent.
Because we've got a nice negative tide that's pulling all the water out of the bay temporarily, and then it'll come back. And this beach is really fascinating because it's so well protected. So there's this big, long sand spit that sticks out with a very narrow opening, and it stretches, gosh, maybe a mile back the other direction, and there's no wake. There's no waves. It's very calm and still here. And what that means is there's a lot of silty sediment here that hasn't been scoured away, and the rocks are sharp and craggy, which is a big contrast to like some of the other beaches that we've seen that are on the outer coast of the island that get battered by the wind and the waves. Oh my goodness, look at that thing.
But yes, craggly rocks, and where did it? Okay, it went into this hole. We might have caught a glimpse of it on film because that was a huge pile worm.
Pile worm. Very cool thing to spot. Good eyes.
But yeah, look how craggly it is. We can do.
None of the rocks are rounded or smooth. We could probably head up and maybe turn a few rocks and show off some shore crabs if we step carefully. Ooh, here's a cool clam siphon. I don't know what species of clams are here because I'm not seeing too many shells washed up either.
Focus camera.
There's only a couple of shells I see.
I was noticing they had the little frills on the siphon. Oh yeah. Rachel got a nice lady red rock crab here. Check her out.
Oh, she's so brightly colored. This is a nice healthy crab. Not quite full size, but still mature. So she may eventually have eggs in this belly flap down here. You can tell it's a red rock crab by the really red coloration everywhere and the black tips to those pinchers. They're very, very strong. So I don't recommend handling this animal as your first crab. They're pretty crabby, as they say.
Now work your crab wrangling skills up from maybe start with a graceful crab. Start with shore crabs, then graceful crabs.
There you go.
And then your advanced crab techniques can
She's
embark
making
upon.
some great
red
noises with her mouth parts, and I'm not sure if you can look and see inside all the ways that her jaws move. Sounds like she's clicking at us.
Layers of different appendages used
Different mouth parts.
for breaking food apart into small pieces so that crab can digest them.
Red rock crabs have tiny little antennas just at the very tips, and their eyes are on stalks so that if I were to try to touch them, she could withdraw her eyes. Of course, I want to be nice to her, and so I won't give her a poke in the face. And we should probably set her right back down so she can walk, but it is cool to see the way that their legs are jointed and can flex and move, but they're very well protected with this hard outer shell. As this crab grows, she's gonna need to shed that shell in order to get larger. So she's kind of trapped in here at the moment, but at the very back of her shell, right down in here, there's this little tiny seam. It's almost like a little perforated section, and that will open up and she'll be able to draw her whole body out. She'll be soft and squishy like a marshmallow and harden over a couple of days, and then she'll be well protected with a nice hard shell.
Cool find.
Set her down and let her keep running around.
Nice bright red to that beautiful green sea lettuce.
Look at that awesome color, or the awesome sideways movement that they have.
Yeah. Sparkling off into the sunlight. Wow, it looks so magical. It's like a unicorn crab. Sparkling into the sunset. That's gonna be a while. All right, what'd you find here?
I've got a little hermit crab.
Oh yeah.
If we're calm, it might come out and take a peek around. Hello, little crabby friend. Oh, whoa. So hermit crabs are fascinating because they have a soft abdomen. So rather than being kind of oval shaped like our red rock crab, they're more elongated, almost like a shrimp. And they have 2 pinchers and a few walking legs, but notice the length of the antennas on this crab compared to that red rock crab. And this one is trying to figure out why it's being held in place and is totally pinching me. But luckily my skin is a little too thick to feel that. But what a great view of this awesome animal. And we'll just let it right back down to scuttle. Oh, there's another bubble snail.
Oh yeah. Love watching
And a little fish.
cruise around. Oh. Ah, whoa. Fish.
Oh, the
boat
waves.
wake. Yeah, this tiny little sculpin. You can see that right there.
They're so fast.
You see that slime on the bubble snail?
Yeah, that mucus trail.
The mucus.
Also, if we look close, we can see that there are some worms in the area because these little pellets are worm poops or clam poops. Nice. Here's another crab. This is the green shore crab. They're not always green, although this one is a lovely color. They're such a fun little species of crab to observe. They're quite cantankerous and crabby with one another, and so if you watch them, they will kind of seem to bicker and fight.
I like watching its little antennas on the front flicker around.
And this is a great species of crab to hold. You just want to hold them low because they do move very, very fast.
Right off of the camera.
Right off.
Come on!
Hold them low to the ground so that they don't drop. Though they have that outer shell, you know, it'd be like you putting on a suit of armor and then jumping off a building. You're still not going to be okay after that. So we want to protect our little creatures, be a good guest at the beach, and be gentle handling anything you come across. Low tide is stressful enough without our interventions, I suppose.
Speaking of stressful, I feel like I saw a sea star over this way.
Oh, all right.
And it looked kind of like it's had a better day.
Sea stars are one of the few predators in this zone that's not a filter feeder. So they actively seek out prey and consume it. So they're carnivores. Now, of course, the tide has moved, and who knows
We've shifted our perspective.
where we are.
Sea stars can also move too, so while they can't move fast, they probably move enough to throw off our... Yeah.
There's lots of evidence of other animals here in the sediment though. There's quite a number of clam holes, which will be kind of the wider holes, bigger, open, not necessarily having a mound over them, and then there's lots of wormholes. So like this is probably a lugworm burrow.
Potentially shrimp.
Or shrimp, yeah, definitely lots of shrimp would be found in this habitat too. Hearing the sports of clams.
Right. Sea star, where'd you go? No, we're not finding the sea star. You can see more crabs cruising around.
So many tidal sculpins.
And so many little fish zipping. Which is a good adaptation. So the tide pool sculpin, unlike their gunnel friends, can't breathe through their skin. So luckily they have the ability to swim away as the tide goes out, so they don't get stranded in these high puddles. Yeah, search for the sea star.
Let's hope a gull wouldn't come along behind us, right?
It's not an ideal treat. Oh my gosh, look at all those fish. Oh, here's our sea star friend. We overshot. Okay. This sea star is a mottled star. You can tell by the smaller central disc and the long, slender legs. It looks like it is either wasted or maybe sun-stressed. Based on these kind of white lesions, it's not looking as healthy as I've seen a typical mottled star. The spot in the middle, of course, is the madreporite, so that's a fine sign. But yeah, it's kind of a strange coloration here.
Could also just be sunburn or stress,
Yeah.
but it does kind of look legiony.
Looking kind of gross. And then underneath, oh, you can see its tube feet in action. So those suction cup toes are holding on to this craggly rock. It's waving at y'all a little bit, wiggling those tube feet around. I'm also noticing there's an anemone with the tentacles out. Oh, boat wake. Making that hard to see. And then, ooh, nice empty heart cockle shell. I'll put this together. You can see that that shell looks like a heart. Kind of a neat clam species that actually has a really cool reaction. So if this was a living heart cockle, they're a species of clam that doesn't always bury in the mud. They can be found kicking their big slimy foot along the seafloor. And that's actually one of their defense mechanisms. So that foot they can use to kick away from a sea star predator, which is wild to see in action. But of course, we won't be able to demonstrate that with the dead cockle here. Rachel also found this oyster. Oysters are determined by their very aggressive fluting on their shell.
That is quite aggressive.
Yeah, kind of looks like little teeth.
Yeah, and they're very sharp. This like, look how thin that is. That's freshly laid down shell margin there, and very, very, that could cut you.
And based on the size, this is easily a Pacific oyster or Japanese oyster. I'm curious, something we noticed in the South Sound is these oysters reproducing on their own. So I'm curious if that's a phenomenon that's also occurring in
here.
the
Yeah,
San Juan
that's
Islands.
interesting to know. And this was one that had settled on another oyster shell, but that doesn't necessarily mean it came from spawn.
Yeah. Which that's a great example of if you are harvesting oysters, you always harvest your oysters on the beach and leave the shells behind to kind of
Provide that
habitat for oysters.
Oyster larvae love to be on oysters because
Exactly.
if an oyster can survive there, then an oyster larva can survive there.
Yeah, and I
Very
see you
successful.
have another friend.
I did. I managed to get super lucky and come across this hairy hermit crab that was eating.
Oh, nice.
So it was not focused on me at all.
So we're in the
In the sunshine more?
sunshine.
Yeah. This is such a cool species of crab. They're very hairy all over, and this is one of the fastest species, which is why I say I'm lucky that I was able to capture one who wasn't quite paying attention and was shoving food in its mouth. They are omnivores, so they'll eat whatever they come across. This one happened to be eating some of this sea lettuce, which is pretty nice and plentiful here, so I didn't feel too bad about disturbing their lunch to show this creature to you. They have very, very pointed feet. The very tips are very sharp. That helps them to gain kind of a good footing and purchase on these craggy rocks and barnacle covered surfaces as well as the sand. And then kind of a long antenna here. And they're super, super fast. Let me show you. Let's put this on. It's actually being very calm in my hand, so it may not just rush away, but generally they are super quick.
Whoa,
Hi.
we're back.
That is my boot and not a rock, although you camouflage quite nicely.
Do you not like my boot?
He's like, I would like to hide, please, thank you.
Okay, okay.
All right, we'll leave you be, little friend. Actually, I think I might help you with
Send you out to deeper pastures.
that. A little more protected.
I'm gonna go ahead and grab this. Damn, it's lost weight. Graceful crab.
Oh yeah, we're just hitting all the crabs today.
Yeah. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Here's another species of crab. This is the graceful crab, often confused with Dungeness because they have a very similar shape. But if you notice by my pinky, there's that whitest tooth and then another notch followed behind that carapace. So that right here lets me know that this is indeed a graceful crab. Also that nice purple legs. I don't know, can you hear the ferry in the background?
Yeah.
Telling the sailboats, hey, get out of my way. We can compare its antenna. So really short antenna on the front. Eyes, stalks also kind of like that red rock crab.
And I'm noticing a few of the graceful crabs out here have kind of a hairy mat of algae growing on their backs, which tells me they haven't yet shed this year. So there's a couple. There's one moving through the water there.
Yeah.
And they just look really, really
Oh my
fuzzy.
gosh, you're super fuzzy. Can I do a super zoom?
Whee! And then I've got another
It's like
crab
a
to
little
talk about
walking floof.
here. Yeah. So when that animal sheds, it will have a nice clean carapace underneath as it hardens.
Nice. And I will, this is one of those crabs that is much easier to wrangle. So
This is like entry-level crab wrangling.
yeah, you can see it's a much calmer species compared to the red rock. Even the green shore crab, it's just a chill little friend here. Okay,
And then I have a very, very speedy hermit crab that has a shell that looks to be way too small for this animal. It cannot withdraw into that shell whatsoever, but that is by design. This little hairy hermit crab, and I can tell it's a hairy because it's got too small of a shell, and it's got little white on that first kind of first joint. And they purposefully choose shells that are too small. And so they do that so they can be the fastest hermit crab around. And so this is an animal that wants to be super, super quick. It's the motorcycle instead of the RV. Much more maneuverable and much smaller shell instead of having one that they can withdraw fully into. And they are super fast, so I always want to make sure that holding them over water or low to the ground so that they don't run right off of me.
oh, here's another great look at a bubble snail right with those eggs.
That's a beautiful one.
I don't think we can quite get the look, but there are eye spots on the front end.
They are super tiny, little itty bitty black dots.
See it kind of retracting.
It's like, hey, who's touching me?
Oh, that is cool. Fun to see them in contrast with their bright yellow eggs, which are everywhere.
Everywhere, my goodness.
So cool.
Love it.
All right, well, that's it for the inside of Fisherman's Bay. We're gonna pop right over this sand spit and do a little comparison of the other side. So thanks for exploring this eelgrass. Also, we see our friends Julia and Connor rowing right back in.
All right.
So looks like Connor is having a great time. Okay, we'll see you on the other side of the spit. Welcome to the other side of the spit. We were just over there. We walked on the trail to get to the other side, and here we are.
This is a really cool sensitive habitat where you have occasional high tide flooding that kind of fills in, so the plants here are adapted to having salt on their roots, which is a pretty rare thing. Most plants can't handle that. And so there's a lot of really interesting plants to be found here, as well as plenty of driftwood and sand and silt, and it's really hot up here. And as soon as we took one step down, it got windy, we picked up a nice sea breeze, and it cooled down about 10 degrees.
Yeah, it's impressive.
Let's go check out the shore.
Woohoo!
And see what we can see.
Sounds good. I'm already noticing the rocks here are much rounder.
Oh yeah.
So a lot more wave action on this part of the beach.
Yeah, this is more what I think of when I think of Puget Sound beaches. And you have the cobble that was distributed here by glaciers during the Ice Age. This sand spit obviously has kind of accumulated a lot of sediment here. And so we've got tons of stuff. You can see where last night's high tide was.
Yeah.
From this strand line, and you can tell it's been hot because all the seaweed is already dry.
Very crunchy looking. Oh yeah, that spit goes all the way to the end. Ooh, that's a fun find.
Got a little bit of rockweed here. One of the few things that hasn't quite dried up yet, and it's because it's filled with goo. So I can kind of squish it and pop it and show you the goo that's inside of there. It feels very much like aloe vera. So maybe if you've got a sunburn, this is your seaside remedy. Although only pick the ones that are not currently attached. This one is no longer. Stands a chance. So cool.
I've also used rockweed as shampoo before.
Oh.
When you're in a pinch.
Good to know. All right, so let's get rid of my wrinkles on my arms. So we have a new beauty treatment.
We have a new beauty treatment. You heard it here first, folks. Yeah, you can imagine that this cobble, as it moves around in the waves, isn't super hospitable to many creatures. So lots of just bare rocks. And then you'll notice we get to this band of green seaweed, knowing that we're getting lower in the intertidal zone, kind of into the mid-intertidal area. And then as we approach the water, it's still looking green, but some red seaweed starting to come up.
This is a cool species of red algae, and we've got some little intertidal donuts. Those are lacuna eggs, snail eggs. I've never been successful in actually finding the snail. I find the eggs all the time because they don't move and they're bright yellow, but the snail is much harder to come across. You see how much sediment has been stirred up by the waves.
A little layer. Also seeing some evidence of eelgrass beds. This is Zostra marina, or marina, however you want to twang that. Got the nice thick blade of our native eelgrass with, you guessed it, more lacuna eggs. Fun to see that. Also on it, the way it's washed up, you can see the rhizomes. So eelgrass is one of the few true plants in the sound where it's actually transporting nutrients throughout its tissues. Something like this seaweed doesn't do that. gets all its things from the water. And of course they both photosynthesize, so kind of cool. And Rachel found a good piece of seaweed.
Yeah, this is some bull kelp. What I found first was this little blob here. And I thought, ooh, it's a little squirt gun.
Oh my gosh.
But no, it's really the holdfast, or excuse me, the pneumaticist of, now it looks like a puppet. Something from Jim Henson. There's some eyeballs on there.
Oh my gosh.
Little Jar Jar Binks.
Okay.
Anyway, this is what it looks like in the living organism. It's a brown algae, a kelp. It has this gas-filled bladder at the top that helps it to float. These work like leaves and do photosynthesis. They're called the blades. Then we have this long stipe. And we can see why this one has washed up. It has a woefully insufficient holdfast here. This part would be anchored to a rock, and if the rock is not a large, big boulder, it's gonna just lift off and travel as this grows and increases. And bull kelp can be over 100 feet long, so you thought this was long.
Oh, you can do some jump roping. Nice, nice. Is that possible? Here's some more seaweed. What is this? It's got a thick middle rib. A common name I'd throw out for this one would be dragon kelp, but I don't actually know what species it is. But there's a tiny little snail on this brown algae here. Very cute. But yeah, this might be based on the base of the holdfast, which is here. As Rachel said, another woefully insufficient holdfast. You picked a rock that can move around too easily here, buddy. So definitely has been blasted out of its happy zone and is cooking up here on the high tide. Womp womp. Finding some more stuff.
There's not much here, which speaks to the kind of current, kind of moving and pulling things away. Yeah.
Some kayaks, so maybe a fun place to come play.
Ooh, yeah.
Not ideal for finding
creature watching,
but that's okay because it's a beautiful day, and we're so thankful that you've tuned in to, you know, do a little spit comparison to see the outer unprotected edge compared to the inner protected cove of Fisherman's Bay here on Lopez Island.
And hopefully you've learned, and hopefully you've had fun. That's the Harbor Wildlife motto. Learn, have fun.
Alrighty, having walked down the spit a bit, we have gotten closer to the entrance and come across a nice eelgrass bed in this kind of near shore habitat. And it's fun to do a little comparison and notice that there's still eggs growing on this eelgrass. But now instead of the bubble snail eggs, we're seeing lots of the little lacuna eggs. So again, those little donut-like gelatinous blobs, which is interesting. I wonder if there's something about the wave action where those snail eggs are more adapted to hanging on, whereas the floppy jelly blobs of the bubble snail maybe don't do so well in a ripping current.
Hey, I found another crab to talk
Dun-dun-dun.
This is a graceful kelp crab.
Oh, nice.
A beautiful species that can decorate. Look at the colors on their legs. That beautiful red banding. And this is a crab that's disguising its shape. Let's see if I can just carefully hold it by the rostrum or by the carapace here. So this little bit of algae is attached to the crab. They do that with their pinchers, and they'll grab and cut off pieces of algae and just stick them right to their face to try to disguise their shape. They have eyes on the side, so a little teeny tiny eyeball right there.
Cool find.
And it was just sitting right on top of the eelgrass, like it was waving to me.
Saying hey. Kind of watch it.
I gotta take a quick picture.
Yeah, perfect.
Looks so good.
And there's our friends again. Rode out to our other side. Well,
More workout.
I don't really think so. So we'll go say hi to our rowboat crew after we see whatever Rachel found.
Rachel's reading about is another larger one.
Notice no pinchers, no seaweed.
No
Oh,
pinchers.
sad buddy.
Yeah, that's a little rough. But this one's giving us a good glimpse
Oh
of
my
those
gosh.
antennae underneath there.
Yeah.
So this piece right here is called the rostrum, and then underneath is 2 longer antennae, and then the eyes are over here on the side, and they're kind of protected in between these 3 spikes.
That is so cool to see. And what's nice about crabs is they have the ability to regenerate lost limbs. And so as long as this crab isn't in its terminal molting phase, it can shed this hard outer shell and then start regrowing those lost pinchers, which would be pretty ideal for this little
Take a while,
individual.
but if you're wanting to hide and, cut your food sized for your mouth parts, that's pretty important.
So we'll wish this little crab some good luck.
Good luck, friend. Thanks for showing off for us. Oh, I think I found the snails actually.
Oh, yeah, those are totally.
I never find them.
You found them.
Hooray. These are the snails and their lovely little yellow donut.
Party. Unless they're predator snails eating the donuts.
What? That could be too. There's another.
Yeah. Dangling.
Yep, a little upside down kelpie crab over there.
However you're doing today, we hope you hang in there like this kelp crab. It's like a little Spider-Man dude.
Spider crab, spider crab. Does whatever spider crab does.
Exactly.
Finds a breath. Yes, he does. Spider crab, spider crab.
This is where we say what we really do.
We sing songs about the untitled sea creatures. What else we got to do?
And then we have Julia. Woohoo!
Nice rowing.
Did you see me get stuck in the eelgrass? So funny. Look at where I was going, because,
All right.
rowing. And I was like, oh wow, the eelgrass is so cool. And then I was
Then you
like, right out there,
Launched
and I
it.
couldn't move the poor I had to yeah, it was gnarly.
All right, we're gonna hang out on the beach now. So thanks for tuning in. Whoop whoop.